Revealed, incredible transformation as billionaire defends Maid after mother's heartbreaking act. In the heart of Oakwood, where wealth dripped like honey from the marble mansions, a storm was brewing in the subtle complexities of social class. Sarah, a single mother of two, poured her heart into cleaning the opulent halls of Crestwood Hotel. Her days were spent scrubbing floors where the wealthy walked, and though her back ached and her knees felt raw, the love she felt for her children pushed her onward. But when her teenage son, Lucas, came home with tears in his eyes, the world felt like it might just collapse around her. "Mom, they laughed at me today," Lucas choked out. "They said I'd never be anything because you're just a maid." Each word pierced Sarah's heart like a dagger, twisting deeper with every confession of bullying her son endured. She felt the weight of his pain, the suffocating shame that draped over their lives like a heavy quilt. In that moment, her resolve wavered. What if distancing him from her was the key to saving his future? Driven by desperation, Sarah made the hardest choice a mother could make. She pulled Lucas close and told him it was time for him to stay with his aunt in the next town over, where he could escape the taunts of their peers. His face was a mixture of confusion and heartbreak, but when he left, it felt as if part of her soul had shattered. As fate would have it, Jack, the billionaire owner of Crestwood, was quietly observing from the shadows. He'd inherited the estate, and though it sparkled with luxury, his heart was burdened by the echoes of his past. As he wandered through the hotel, he caught sight of Sarah, her hands working tirelessly as she shoved aside her own dreams, her own needs. She was a warrior, fiercely battling the judgments of the elite. He felt an unfamiliar fire ignite within him as he realized the lengths she went to for her children. The community never understood her struggle, how the pristine lawns concealed realities so raw. When whispers swirled about Sarah and her son, Jack knew it was time to act. He approached Sarah, recognizing the depth of her pain, and offered an empathetic ear. Within moments, their worlds collided in a poignant discussion about dignity and sacrifice, breaking through the walls erected by wealth and privilege. Jack shared the hardships that shaped him, revealing a mirroring of their pain that sparked an unexpected connection. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Their conversation deepened, intertwining vulnerability and resilience as they unraveled the injustices that governed their lives. Through shared laughter and unexpected tears, they began to see that hope for a different future was possible. The night thickened with emotion, a potent reminder that love and justice could stand against the divides of Oakwood. But just as they leaned into their connection, an unforeseen event rippled through the gathering, casting shadows over their budding bond. Suddenly, the ground beneath them felt unstable as gossip and judgment took center stage, creating doubt and fear. In a moment, it became clear that their fight was bigger than themselves, an uphill battle against ignorance and prejudice. Sarah's heart raced with uncertainty. Would she find the strength to mend the cracks in her relationship with Lucas? As she prepared to confront the unimaginable, she was determined more than ever, to bridge the chasm that society had carved between them, no matter the cost. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the warm glow finally surrendered to the cool uncertainty of night. Sarah's heart felt heavy in her chest as she gazed into the distance, her mind racing with thoughts of Lucas. She replayed their last moments in her head, the confusion in his eyes, the tremble in his voice. It was a look she knew too well. She had seen it reflected in her own face when she had lost her dreams to the harsh reality of the world around them. With each passing minute, doubt crept in like a thief in the night. Had she made the right choice? Pushing her son away for his own good sounded noble in theory, but the pain it caused them both echoed louder than any justification. Just then, she felt a presence beside her. Jack stood there, sensing her turmoil, his unguarded gaze filled with concern. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. The question hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Sarah blinked back tears, fighting to keep her composure. "I'm trying to be," she whispered, her voice barely a breath. Jack shifted closer, instinctively knowing that the silence wasn't meant for him to fill. He positioned himself as a steady rock, letting her unravel. "It's okay to not be okay," he encouraged. Sarah hadn't realized how much those words resonated until that moment. They were an invitation to let go. Finally, her walls crumbled. "I just want him to be happy," she said, her voice breaking. "But what if I'm the reason he's not?" "Sarah, you're his mother. Your love is his foundation," Jack replied, his voice low but firm. "I've watched you fight for him. That matters more than the opinions of others." As she looked into his eyes, she saw a reflection of her pain and a glimmer of understanding. The connection between them was no longer fragile, it was fortified by shared experiences. Just then, a loud commotion erupted from the lobby of the hotel, voices rising in agitation. Jack's expression shifted, revealing concern. "Sarah, wait here. I'll see what's happening," he urged, slipping away into the crowd. She felt a knot tighten in her stomach, a sense of foreboding washing over her as she tried to steady her breathing. Minutes passed, feeling like hours. Just when anxiety threatened to pull her under, Jack returned, his face taut. "It's about you and Lucas. The news is spreading like wildfire." Her pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" "Some guests heard the comments about your family. They're whispering and pointing fingers calling you unfit for working here," he said, frustration simmering under his words. Instinctively, Sarah clutched her chest. The fear she had fought against, believing distance would shield her son, now felt like a torrential storm about to break. "Jack, I can't let them hurt him anymore," she murmured, panic suffocating her. The tears she had held back now flowed freely. Before she could gather her thoughts, Jack took her hands in his, grounding her. "You're not alone in this. Let us show them who you really are. Your son deserves to see his mother fight, not hide." The fire lit in his words flickered something deep within her. Sarah took a deep breath, the resolve igniting against the shadows of despair. As she stood up, her heart racing, she realized that she was no longer alone in this battle. But just as she was prepared to step out, her phone buzzed urgently on the table. It was a message from Lucas. "Mom, I need to talk. Please call me." With her heart in her throat, Sarah looked at Jack, uncertainty swimming in her eyes. This moment could change everything, but could she face whatever lay ahead? As she pressed her finger to the call button, her mind raced with questions. She wasn't ready for what came next, and deep down, she feared what Lucas might reveal. Would she still be able to protect him? As the phone rang, Sarah's heart thudded in her chest, each ring pulling her deeper into an ocean of uncertainty. Thoughts whirled in her mind. What if he was upset? What if he felt abandoned? She had tried so hard to shield Lucas from the chaos surrounding them, yet here it was, crashing right at their doorstep. "Mom?" Lucas's voice came through, sharp and clear. Hearing it made her feel lighter, yet the unease returned as she sensed the weight behind his words. "Sweetheart," she started, hoping to convey reassurance, but the pain in his tone cut her off. "Can we talk somewhere private?" His request was firm, leaving no room for discussion. It was then that she understood this was serious. "Of course. Where are you?" "I'm in the park, by the old oak tree," he said, and before she could respond, the call ended. Sarah glanced up at Jack, who had watched the exchange with a furrowed brow. "You need to go to him now," he urged, not waiting for her response. His conviction lit a fire under her, one she didn't realize she needed. Each step toward the park felt heavy yet purposeful. The evening air was cooling, but inside her heart burned a mix of apprehension and determination. What could Lucas want to discuss? The rumors? His own feelings of hurt? The weight of possibility sank in, pressing harder against her chest. As she approached the familiar oak, she saw Lucas seated beneath its broad branches, his face shadowed by the fading light. He looked so small, lost in his thoughts, and she immediately regretted the distance she had forced upon him. "Lucas," she called softly. As he looked up, she saw the conflict swirling in his eyes, hurt mixed with longing. "Mom," he whispered, standing as she reached him. They moved toward each other but halted, seeming unsure of the next step. "Are you okay?" she asked, both longing and fear flooding through her voice. His silence spoke volumes. Finally, he sighed deeply. "I don't know, Mom. I keep hearing what people are saying about us, about you. It hurts." A rush of regret washed over her like a wave. "I wanted to protect you. I thought distance would help," she explained, her own voice cracking. "Protect me? Or push me away?" Lucas countered, and his words hit her like a punch. She had tried to be strong, yet now she saw that being protective was not synonymous with being absent. Tears fell freely as Sarah shook her head. "I never wanted to push you away, Lucas. Can you forgive me?" "I don't know if I can forgive you yet," he admitted, vulnerability tugging at his voice. "I just wish you would talk to me instead of keeping things to yourself. I feel like I'm in the dark, and it's scary." At that moment, a realization crashed over her. This was not just about the whispers that lingered like rumors in the hotel, it was about the bond they needed to rebuild. "I will fight for you, Lucas. Together, we can face this." Before she could finish, he interrupted. "What if I end up being the one to hurt you?" The gravity of his fear mirrored the storm in her own heart. She had worked so hard to keep him safe, to stave off the pain that had haunted them both since the day they lost everything. The silence thickened as they shared a glance filled with unspoken worries. "We all get hurt sometimes, but that doesn't mean we should stop fighting for each other," Sarah finally replied. Just as they stood in that moment of understanding, a sharp voice called from behind. "Is everything all right here?" Sarah turned to see a group of onlookers approaching, their eyes wide with curiosity and judgment. Her heart raced. The scrutiny weighed heavy. Would they see her as the mother who fought for her son, or the failure everyone whispered about? Lucas stepped closer, placing a hand on her arm. "Let us just ignore them," he murmured. But Sarah knew that wasn't an option anymore. As they faced this sudden confrontation together, the warmth of their shared moment began to flicker. With the community watching, she could either stand tall beside her son or shatter under the pressure of their expectations. Before she could respond, Lucas whispered, "But what if? This is only the beginning of a fight we didn't ask for." What lay ahead seemed more daunting than ever, and she wondered whether their bond could withstand the trials that were starting to unfold. Would they emerge stronger from this together, or would it all fall apart like a house of cards? As the murmurs grew louder, Sarah felt every pair of eyes digging deeper into her skin. She and Lucas stood at the heart of judgment, surrounded by whispers that now felt like concrete walls closing in on them. Her grip on his arm tightened, as if anchoring him to her while the world spiraled out of control. "They don't understand us," she said, trying to hold back the tide of her own emotions. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Maybe they don't have to," Lucas replied, his tone shifted from uncertainty to a flicker of defiance. The hurt was still there, but so was a newfound spark of courage. It reminded her of the little boy who had once climbed the oak tree without fear, who had laughed louder than anyone. "You're right," Sarah breathed, looking around at the crowd. "They don't know our story. But the truth is, we have to start telling it." The onlookers shifted, intrigued but uncertain. She could see a few skeptical expressions, but others were beginning to soften. There was power in standing up, in being visible. Sometimes, the sheer act of facing discomfort could carve pathways to understanding. "Let us talk right here," Lucas said, surprising her. He took a step forward, drawing the eye of the concerned crowd. "People keep whispering about us. About what happened. They think they know." Sarah began, but he held up a hand, a mix of teenage bravado and something deeper. No, Mom. Let me do this. He took a breath, his voice steady now. They don't know what it's like to lose everything. To watch everything fall apart and feel like you're disappearing in the shadows. But they can't break us apart. His words were clearer than anything she had heard that day. They hung in the air, a declaration of their resilience. Moved by his bravery, Sarah felt a small smile break through the fear. A wave of love surged through her, giving her strength. You're right, sweetie. This isn't just about me. It's about us. About being honest and facing life together. The crowd grew still. A few heads nodded, and she noticed dim glimmers of understanding among those who had stopped to watch. Perhaps they were beginning to sense the truth, raw, human emotion that connected them all. Just remember, Lucas added, his expression softening, we might hurt, but together we can find a way through. Like always. Sarah's heart swelled. There it was, the bond they had fought to build even when it felt like the seams were coming apart. Before she could say anything else, an older woman stepped forward. I'm sorry, she said, voice tinged with regret. I didn't know. I should have reached out instead of passing judgment. The others shifted, a few offering reluctant apologies while the tension in the air began to crack. Sarah felt the weight lift, if only slightly. Rebuilding starts with understanding, and perhaps this was the first step. Let us talk, King, an acquaintance of Lucas, called out. We're here to listen. The group shifted from something hostile to a community, willing to embrace their vulnerability. As Sarah looked at the faces surrounding her, she recalled the journey they had taken to get here, the battles they had fought alone, and the one they had just begun together. Thank you, she said to the crowd, her voice breaking through the momentary silence. Thank you for giving us a chance. A sense of camaraderie began to unfold amongst them, and Sarah grasped the magnitude of what Lucas had done. They stood tall now, no longer dwarfed by the judgments that threatened to engulf them, yet beneath that moment of clarity, a familiar trepidation crept back in. They had taken one step forward, but what would come next? Would the whispers fade, or would they morph into something more sinister, needing a fight that lay ahead? As they stood there, united by uncertainty and hope, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling the storm was not over yet. Would they be able to weather it together, or would the next round of challenges prove too much to hold their fragile bond? The crowd was no longer a sea of judgment but a collection of faces flickering with interest and empathy. Sarah felt the warmth of the evening sun on her skin, the rays filtering through the leaves of the ancient oak tree that stood proud behind her. Maybe they could be a community again. Can I share something? A voice broke through the murmurs. It was King, standing with his hands shoved deep in his pockets. His shoulders were slightly hunched, but his expression was earnest. I remember when my dad lost his job. It was rough. People didn't understand, and we faced some pretty harsh whispers ourselves. But we found a way through it. Sarah's heart raced. Would more people step forward? Would they share their pain, too? I was scared, King continued, his eyes flitting over to Lucas for a brief second before landing back on Sarah, but we had each other. That's what matters. Lucas nodded vigorously, feeding off the energy shifting in the circle. Exactly. Just because the world is crazy doesn't mean we have to be. We can make it better. Together. Sarah looked around, feeling waves of hope ripple through her. Was this the start of healing? And there it was, a teenage girl stepped forward, her ponytail bobbing with each nervous step. I saw what happened at school, she began hesitantly. People said things, and I didn't know what to say. I should have said something, too. I'm sorry. Apologies began rolling in like an avalanche, a chain reaction that seemed to spark more courage through the group. Man after woman stepped forward, sharing their stories of hardship and heartache, weaving a tapestry of shared experiences. It's scary to share, an older man said, his voice wavering slightly, but it helps. We have to keep each other safe. Words flowed like the river beside them, washing away the hurt. Each story resonated, creating connections where once there was separation. The air warmed with a sense of unity, like a blanket wrapped snug around their shoulders. Sarah felt tears prickle at her eyes. This was more than just an apology, it was a promise to do better. To see one another. It was a healing moment for her and Lucas, one they had yearned for. "Can we do it together?" Lucas asked, eyes alight with determination. "Can we make an agreement to support one another moving forward?" A chorus of nods echoed through the crowd. A feeling of determination pulsed among them. Sarah's heart swelled, hope blossoming in the cracks of their shared pain. They stood at a pivotal moment, on the brink of something altogether new, but as the shadows lengthened and the sun dipped below the horizon, she sensed something lurking just beyond the warmth that enveloped them. Could they really change things, or was this just the calm before a bigger storm? Lucas caught her gaze, and she could see the worry flickering in his eyes. "Mom, what happens next? Can we really trust them?" As she looked back at the cluster of faces offering themselves to her, uncertainty twisted within her. They had come so far, but would the sincerity of this newfound connection last when the next challenge arose? Or would it slip through their fingers just like the sunlight disappearing behind the trees? Sarah's heart raced as a shiver ran through her. What if the truth of their past came back to haunt them? Would standing together be enough this time? With her breath hitching, she asked the question that hung in the air: what will it take to truly support one another? Little did she know, that was only the beginning of their struggle. The air thickened with tension as everyone absorbed Sarah's question. Eyes darted around the circle, each face reflecting the same uncertainty. George, a man known for his quiet presence in the crowd, suddenly stepped forward. He had always kept to the edges, afraid to disturb the peace, but tonight seemed different. "I think," he started, hesitating for a moment as he rubbed the back of his neck. "I think it takes more than just words. Actions, right? We can say we support each other, but what about those moments when it's hard? When it's easier to look away?" Nods of agreement rippled through the group. A murmur grew, churning with energy. Sarah felt a flicker of anxiety mixed with hope. This was uncharted territory. "What happens when we don't agree?" a woman from the back shouted. Her voice quaked with emotion, and it silenced the crowd. "What if we mess up? What if someone walks away again?" Her fears echoed in the hearts of many. Sarah took a deep breath, trying to calm the rising tide of worry. "It's okay," she replied softly, "to be scared of that." But maybe she paused, searching for the right words. Maybe it's about how we handle those disagreements. About coming back to the table and talking it through. Instead of avoiding each other. Lucas chimed in, like what we're doing now. We're learning to listen. More voices surged forward, an avalanche of thoughts spilling out. Each was a note of vulnerability, a thread tightening the fabric of their community. "I want to be open about my struggles," a young woman admitted, "but sometimes I don't even know how." "I feel the same way," Lucas said, glancing at Sarah. "I get scared. What if someone doesn't like what I say?" A wave of reassurance washed over the group. They remembered how far they had come, how sharing their stories had already built bridges. "Maybe it's a pact," George suggested, his own voice growing steadier. "A promise to keep talking, even when it's hard." "Yes." Sarah's excitement bubbled over, igniting a spark in the collective. "Let us make it an agreement. To support each other, to challenge each other, and to stay connected. No matter how difficult it gets." Emotions swirled like a colorful whirlwind. A young boy, clutching a stuffed bear, broke into a shy smile. "I like that." As the sun faded, leaving streaks of orange and pink in the sky, the atmosphere shifted. They were moving through the fog of doubt towards clarity. Here stood potential, hope blossoming even amidst the shadows of their fears. But just as relief began to settle, a boy in the back, usually silent, stood up. His voice quivered, drawing everyone's attention. What if people don't believe us? What if they think we're just saying this because we feel guilty? His words sank in, the reality of the world outside their circle creeping in, like the hint of a storm brewing on the horizon. Sarah felt a knot in her stomach. Could they withstand the outside pressure? Could they truly honor their agreements when doubts crept in? Be honest, okay? Lucas said, turning to the crowd, his fervor re-energizing the moment. Can we promise to check in, to keep talking? No matter who sides with whom? The reaffirmation of hands raised high and voices crying out filled her with hope once more. They could do this. They wouldn't let the past define them, but just as the group began to solidify its commitment, a loud crash echoed through the park. Startled faces turned toward the source, fears bubbling back up. What had changed in the serenity of their agreement? And who or what might threaten their fragile sense of unity? Questions swirled like dark clouds, casting a sudden shadow over their moment of breakthrough. What lay ahead would test everything they had just promised. The crash echoed like thunder, breaking the calm they had just started to build. Everyone turned, eyes wide and breaths held. Sarah's heart raced. The serene atmosphere was punctured, and it felt like the ground beneath them shifted. A figure emerged from the shadows of the trees, an older man, disheveled and wild-eyed. His clothes were torn, and dirt streaked across his face. It was Tom, the man who often lingered on the outskirts of their meetings, the one they all exchanged hesitant glances towards. No one truly understood his story, he seemed to be a puzzle just out of reach. "Why are you all here?" he shouted, voice strained with desperation. "What do you think you're doing, pretending to be something you're not?" The softness that had begun to wrap around the gathering snapped like a brittle twig. Sarah's stomach twisted. Was this anger? Or was it fear? "Tom, we're just trying to connect," George said, stepping back to the front, though his previous confidence faltered. "We want to listen, to understand." "Listen to what? Empty promises?" Tom's hands flailed, his voice rising. "You think talking means you care? People are suffering out there, and here you are, trading words like their currency." Silence fell, heavy and disorienting. Each person reflected his words, feeling the sting of truths they had only hoped to ignore for a moment. Sarah could see the doubt creeping in again, the very fear they had been trying to combat. "We know it's not enough," Sarah finally spoke, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "But we're trying to find a way to be better. We don't want to turn our backs anymore." Tom shook his head, anger intermingled with vulnerability. "You think you can just sit around and talk it out? You're missing the point. It's your silence that causes the pain, your unwillingness to step into the chaos." A murmur spread through the group, an uncomfortable recognition. The faces around Sarah turned solemn. Were they truly ready to confront their privilege? To move beyond the circle of comfort they had created? "What if we could help?" Lucas said, stepping forward now, reaching for a connection amidst the chaos. "What if we turned those words into something forced into action? Like a real commitment to give back, to show up?" Tom paused, uncertainty flashing in his eyes. He looked at Lucas, then scanned the faces of the crowd, lingering on the young boy clutching his bear. "You think it's that easy?" "We won't pretend to have answers," Sarah said, her heart thudding as she felt the weight of their challenge. "But we need to ask, to learn. That's how we grow, right? It's messy, but we want to try." Just then, a woman stepped forward, one who had been quiet until now. "I lost my job last summer," she admitted, her voice trembling. "I didn't reach out because I was embarrassed. Maybe we can create a way to share our struggles instead of hiding them." Spurred by her courage, others began to share. Each voice raised added to the stirring movement in the air. Tom listened, his demeanor beginning to shift, the anger curling into something softer. The group drew together, bound by a mix of fear, pain, but also hope. With each shared story, a possibility emerged: maybe they could build something real together. Yet, what that would look like remained uncertain, threatening, just like Tom's initial outburst had suggested. As more people opened up, they began to understand that this was just the start of something larger, something that required all of them in deep commitment. But Tom's wild eyes flickered with doubt. In that moment, Sarah felt they stood on the precipice of understanding and chaos. Could they invite Tom in? Would he choose to let down his guard? The night hung heavy with unanswered questions as they gazed at Tom, waiting. Could they reclaim their promise amidst the storm, or was it about to unravel right before their eyes? The air felt electric, thick with tension as Tom's gaze swept over the gathering. Each person clung to their own stories, their own pains, and now, they were all navigators lost in this wild sea of vulnerability. What could they say to convince him they were more than just a chorus of pretty words? Tom's hands fell to his sides, his breath heavy. The fight seemed to drain from him, leaving only the weary shell of a man who had carried the weight of the world for too long. Sarah saw it, that flicker of turmoil behind those wild eyes, and she ached to reach out to him. "Tom," she said softly, stepping closer. "We know we can't erase the pain or pretend it doesn't exist. But we're here because we want to try. We're not trying to avoid the chaos like you said. We want to face it." He hesitated, and Sarah could feel the collective breath of the group holding on, waiting for his next move. "What do you think that means?" He shot back, though the bite in his voice seemed less sharp. "What could you possibly do?" "We could start by listening," Lucas offered, his voice steady. "Not just hearing, but truly listening to each other. We can find ways to support those who are struggling, to change our actions." Tom shook his head, dismissing the words. "You don't understand. It's not enough to just listen. You have to act. You have to risk something. Otherwise, it's meaningless." "It could be more than we ever imagined." Sarah leaned in closer, feeling the tension vibrate through her. "I believe that if we work together, we can create something genuine, real change. But it starts here, with all of us. Including you." She saw something shift in Tom. Maybe it was the way she didn't look away, her eyes steady with conviction. Or maybe it was the raw honesty spilling out from the group around them. They were all scared, all searching for a way to navigate their own lives filled with uncertainty. "Fine," he said, voice lowered to a harsh whisper. "But if you're going to do this, you have to be ready for the consequences. It's messy, and people get hurt. You've got to truly understand that." Sarah glanced at the others, their faces painted with determination and fear, each one echoing Tom's uncertainty. She could feel it deep inside, a storm brewing as they teetered on that precipice together. "What are you scared of?" she dared to ask, the question lingering in the air. Tom opened his mouth, and then his shoulders slumped. "Scared of failing," he admitted, vulnerability cutting through the anger he had wrapped around himself. "Scared of putting it all out there and still not being enough." A ripple of understanding passed through the group. There was an empathy that wove them tighter than any words could. "I'm scared, too," the woman who had shared earlier spoke up again. "But I want to try, to be real. We're all just trying to make sense of our own heartbreaks, right?" As if on cue, more voices rose. It felt like a symphony, raw and true. Guilt and hope intertwined, building an unsteady bridge toward Tom, and thus, beneath the canopy of trees lit by soft moonlight, hearts unshackled themselves. Tom felt the power in this communal weight, and a spark ignited behind those wild eyes. "All right," he said, just above a whisper. "Let us see what you're made of. But know this: if you really want to dive into the chaos, you need to be all in." In that moment, something transformed. Sarah felt a lightness, a liberating courage surge. They weren't lost, they were discovering a striving spirit that could guide them, even in darkness. With tentative breaths, they all stepped closer together, threads of unity pulling them tightly as one. Could a group of strangers truly embrace chaos and build something beautiful out of it? The answer felt just out of reach, swirling just beyond their fingertips. Waiting for the next steps was the hardest, but as the silence sang between them, a collective promise began to form, an unspoken pact pulsing with potential. What would that action look like? And even more pressing, could they trust each other to see it through? The night air wrapped around them like a warm blanket, but the unease hung just above, like a storm threatening to break. Sarah felt a sense of anticipation that pulsed in her chest. They stood together, a band of misfits united by their scars, ready to leap into the chaos that had driven Tom to this moment. "All right," Tom said slowly, gathering himself. "If I'm going to trust you, you need to trust me, too. This isn't a safe path. There's no guardrails." Several people exchanged glances, their expressions a mixture of fear and determination. Lucas stepped forward, his voice firm. "We can't change without risk. We know that. It's why we're here." Tom eyed them, searching for any hint of hesitation, but he only found a resolute fire mirrored back at him. His heart raced as he felt the weight of their expectation, a weight he couldn't shake off. "Then it's simple," he said, sounding more certain. "We need to start dialoguing beyond this circle, reach out to others. People we all know who are hurting, those who need more than just empty words. But I'm not doing this alone. If you want change, you've got to meet me halfway and push through." With that challenge thrown into the air, the tense silence broke. Sarah could feel sparks between them, electric and alive. One by one, people began to nod, a ripple of agreement, a sea of small acts on the verge of rising. "Count me in," the woman with soft eyes spoke first. "I know someone who has been struggling. I can connect with her." "Me too," Lucas chimed in, his voice steady. "There's a guy at work who lost his brother. I'll reach out and see where he's at." The murmurs grew louder, confidence blossoming. Each individual started to recount others in their lives who needed support, names tumbling over the familiar barriers of isolation. As the group began to map out how they would reach out, Sarah could see the spark in Tom's eyes flicker brighter. She knew he was grappling with something deeper, maybe even an inkling of hope. It thrilled her, that moment when entrapped hearts brim just before breaking open. "What happens when we feel overwhelmed?" someone asked tentatively, their voice cutting through the burgeoning energy. "Then we lean on each other," Tom replied, his tone growing softer, more genuine. "This isn't just about who we help, it's about how we strengthen ourselves as a unit. We face those feelings head-on together." That simple thought hung between them. It was a promise, one that threaded through each heart present. Suddenly, Sarah felt tears sting her eyes. It wasn't the sorrow that typically clouded her thoughts, instead, it was the profound realization that they were building something beautiful, an unbreakable connection woven through vulnerability and shared purpose. Tom, noticing the shifting emotions, lowered his voice. "I want to share something, too. About my brother." Immediately, the air shifted again. Everyone leaned in, hushed whispers and murmurs paused. Tom took a deep breath, searching for the right words, the kind that could bind them even closer. "He was everything to me. When I lost him, it felt like I'd lost myself, too. I buried that hurt instead of confronting it." His confession echoed in the stillness, and a shiver traveled down Sarah's spine. Here was Tom, a man often built up with walls of bravado, wearing his heart nakedly amidst them. The unfiltered truth opened a floodgate as each member began sharing their own stories, their own losses, fears bubbling up and spilling over with newfound vulnerability. The trust blossomed like wildflowers after heavy rain. In the midst of pain, they were starting to craft a network of support, a lifeline. As the clock ticked on, an unanticipated excitement filled the air, just enough to silence doubts. But what hadn't been addressed loomed large, overshadowing their newly crafted bonds. What would they do when the initial rush faded? The question wrapped around them, heavier and more imminent than the last. Would their resolves hold in the face of setbacks? Sarah's heart raced as she leaned into that uncertainty. They had taken the First step, yes, but would they remain steadfast when hurdles lined the path ahead? The group paused, caught in that fragile moment, their breath steadying as they awaited Tom's words, curiosity waiting at the edge of reason. Was this truly the beginning of their transformation, or just a prelude to another wave of heartache? As the moon climbed high, illuminating their faces with a silver glow, Tom's voice broke through the lingering tension. "You're right," he said quietly, yet fiercely. "This isn't just a moment. It can't be." He lifted his gaze, steady and determined. "It should be the start of an unstoppable wave of change." Sarah felt her heart race. The weight of his words ignited ember after ember within her, each one fanning the flames of possibility. They weren't just a group of broken individuals anymore, they were a fledgling community, slowly but surely forging bonds that could withstand the storms of judgment and prejudice. "I know this won't be easy," Tom admitted. "But what if we commit to showing up for each other through the ups and downs? What if we stand in the messy middle together?" A murmur of agreement rippled through the gathering, soft yet powerful. "I think we can," Lucas chimed in, his youthful energy palpable. "We've already faced so much. If we can do this, we can face anything." He glanced around, hopeful. "Let us make this official. A pact, a promise. To lift each other up." Sarah glanced around at the faces illuminated by moonlight. Confidence was replacing uncertainty. Something stirred in her chest, a reminder that love was a formidable force. "Together, we can be a support system," she added, her voice gaining strength. "But it has to be more than just words. We have to act. We can be there for one another beyond this circle." One by one, they began to pledge their commitment. Each promised to support, to listen, to turn those whispered fears into shared courage. Felt like nails being pounded into the foundation of something profound. It wasn't simply community building, it was family, woven together by blood and shared struggle. "I can help organize community cleanups," said a woman with kind eyes. "We can connect with folks who feel lost and reach them where they are. And maybe we can set up resources for those in need," another voice proposed. "Look out for the unemployed, the underprivileged, they might feel isolated like we once did." With each suggestion, the energy thrummed in the air, a symphony of hope echoing their shared strengths. Sarah could feel the momentum building, and within it, a promise of transformation. Just then, a familiar voice rang out from the rear. "What about those who can't come to us?" It was a young girl who threaded her way through the crowd. "How do we support the ones who feel forgotten?" The air was still for a moment. Each face met hers in reflection, acknowledging the depth of her question. "Great point," Tom responded, his voice calm but deeply appreciative. "This isn't a one-way street. We'll need to go out and find those voices. Together." Something shifted within the group, an inherited longing to not only uplift each other but to extend their reach toward those still grappling with silent struggles. As they stood beneath the watchful gaze of the stars, sparks of purpose ignited brighter. "We can do this," Sarah said, her heart swelling. "We can be the change we've wanted to see. This fear won't hold us back anymore. We'll be there for one another, no matter what." The circle closed tightly around her as hands clasped together, a physical manifestation of their new pact. Whispers of anticipation and bravery filled the night, mingling with laughter that broke the weight of lingering doubt. And at that moment, something shifted in Sarah's soul. It was as if the heavy quilt of shame that had choked her heart began to fray, unveiling connection and love, building blocks for the future she never thought possible. "Thank you for believing in this," she whispered. "You all make me feel like I belong." Tom nodded, admiration lacing his gaze. "It's not just you, Sarah. It's all of us. Together, we rise, together, we fight." As the moon dipped lower, the intensity of their newfound bond settled warm in their hearts. They were more than mothers, brothers, sisters, fathers. They were a patchwork quilt of shared stories, woven unified by empathy, and under that silver sky, amidst the whispers of change, they knew the path ahead would be filled with challenges. Hand in hand, they were ready to face it all, with hearts beating as one. They stepped forward into the night, eager to meet whatever came next, no longer afraid of being seen, no longer afraid of their truth. In the quiet that followed, Sarah knew one thing for certain: the real transformation wasn't just about bridging the gap between classes, it was about realizing the infinite power of love and community. This was the moment that would define them, and it was just the beginning. Now, this is a pivotal moment for you too. You need to subscribe immediately to our channel so you don't miss out on the next exclusive stories. Every like truly makes a difference, so leave a like now to help feed the algorithm. I want to hear from you. Comment your reactions and feelings about the ending. And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Let us spread the word.